Right. Let me make sure all my stuff is correct. All right. So, welcome everybody. My name is Julia, and Leah, and I will be leading a conversation on our third session's topic, which is resumes. So, when you guys came in, Leah had mentioned asking you guys to kind of take a few minutes, make a list of all the things that you've done, all the things that you're doing, that you're proud of, that you enjoy, and sometimes even things that you don't necessarily enjoy, that's been happening right now. So, of course, like your classes and clubs that you join, anything happening outside of school, like any kind of church groups or community work that you do, any kind of sports you're involved with, any jobs that you've had, any volunteering stuff that you've done, babysitting, awards that you've received, personality traits, all that information. We wanted you to make a list because that is going to be important information for your resume. You can go to the next slide. So what are we doing today? We're going to go over what a resume is exactly and why you need one, parts of a resume, upkeep and personalization, and how to actually get started on creating your own resume. So what is a resume and why do you need one? So say you are applying for a job, say you are looking at a volunteer opportunity, or you're applying for just like school or anything that you want to do. Some people might ask you for a resume. And a resume, simply, is a really quick look at who you are. It's a summary of who you are. So it goes over your skills and the training that you've received. It goes over any kind of work experience. It goes over your education, and then your accomplishments. So that when someone wants to kind of take a quick look at who is this person, they're able to kind of get a really quick guide to who you are and what you've done, and possibly what you would bring to an organization or to a group. Like it says here, the first impression of an employer has of you. So this is who you are to them. This is what you will be bringing to their team or to their organization. So it's an introduction. It can make or break you, and it provides an example of possibly what kind of skills or things you want to bring to their organization.
So the different parts of a resume, you're going to start with the basics. You want to be able to easily be contacted and that name to kind of stick out at the top. Same with email address, a professional one, and one that you have access to beyond graduation. So I'm not really sure if you will have access to your Baltimore City School email address after graduation, but thinking about maybe making a Gmail with your first and last name, or just your last name and some numbers. Something professional that you can add to a variety of different references and your resume. Along with your phone number, a working phone number that you have access to. If you share a phone with someone, making sure that if you're actively applying for jobs, you kind of talk with that person about, hey, if someone calls for me, what are the protocols I'd like you to follow in order to make sure that I receive that message and can call back in a timely manner. So contact information first and foremost up top. Then we have the introduction or objective. If you're submitting a cover letter, which is pretty common these days to be requested with a resume and a job application, the introduction is not necessarily as important. This is going to be 3 sentences right after your name, the first part of the resume, about why you are interested in the position and why you'd make a good fit. So very concise. And then everything after that is kind of backing up that introduction or that objective to say why you would make such a good fit. And here's all my skills and experience after that. If you are submitting a cover letter, which we will talk about in a subsequent session, then the objective is less important because you'll be covering all of that in a page also submitted. This is also a good way to kind of fill up if you have not a lot of things on your resume, which most high schoolers don't. This is a good way to fill up a little bit of space and show that you are being really intentional about the job that you're applying to. The introduction also is position specific and always changes. So you'll never submit the same introduction for a different position. You'll always at least tweak it a little bit. After the introduction, you have education. So if you're currently in high school and you're applying to a job, you'll say your expected graduation date. If you've already graduated, you're keeping this updated. Then you'll say when you graduated, what school you're graduating from, and if you are in if you have a GPA that's above 3.0, that is your choice that you can share that information. We do recommend that if you have a GPA that's under 3.0, just leave it off. You graduated and that is celebration enough to put it on your resume. Under that is that experience. So Julia mentioned the list that we were making at the beginning of the session. This is where you can start plugging in a lot of those experiences and the dates in which you worked or volunteered. This can include hobbies, volunteering, paid positions, internships, all sorts of different experience. And then underneath that, the skills. Again, for a high schooler who might not have an extensive work history, you're really going to want to hammer those skills as well. So if you enjoy game design or retail or enjoy art and being creative, those are the things that you can kind of focus in on at the bottom of your resume to make sure that you fill in that space, as well as are able to kind of connect or find something in common with the person that you're interviewing. Last but not least, your 3 references are very common for job applications. And if you're trying to fill up just the little extra space at the end, you can definitely add your references onto the bottom of your resume. Any questions? We're going to go into some tips next. Awesome. So some tips while you're kind of formatting this resume is that this is a brag sheet. You want to talk yourself up. You want to be excited about all the things. Make sure to run it past someone, but there's really no experience at this point that, unless it was a bad one, that you want to leave off. So volunteering, taking care of brothers and sisters, dog walking are all things that you can write on there and then talk to how that was a leadership experience or a learning opportunity for you. Another thing is that your resume should only be 1 page. No one has time or energy to flip over. You all know how it feels to finish the one side of the worksheet and then realize there's a second page to it. No one wants that. So make sure that you edit it to make 1 page. And then if you have multiple experiences that you're leaving off, you can have just like a big long list, something in like Google Docs or something where you have all of your experiences. And then when you are applying to a specific job, you can kind of pull those experiences that best meet that objective so that you can kind of specify exactly what do we got going on in the chat right now. Exactly. So 6
Yes.
seconds. No one wants that second page because they're trying to breeze through your resume in less time. Use words from the job
Especially if
description.
they have a
Go for it, Julia.
I was saying, especially if they have a lot of applicants. So this is we want to make sure that you are standing out. So bragging about yourself and all the good things that you do is a really good thing to do because they only have a few seconds to look at it.
Exactly. And another way to stand out is to use words right from the job description. And that can actually make creating that resume, creating those little descriptions a little easier. If you're using the words leadership, empower, efficient, some words that generally pop up in job descriptions, then that person who has that 6 seconds to review your resume is going to say, cool, they're checking all the boxes because they are doing the exact things we were asking for, and they'll put you in the interview pile. So making sure that you're reviewing that job description and you're using some of that vocabulary. With being able to show off and brag about yourself, making sure that you are not lying. If you are proficient in Word, that's great. But if you can only type into Excel and have no idea how to use any of the functions, do not say. I think that is the biggest thing, is people say that they can use Excel way better than they actually can. So making sure that you do not lie and find yourself in a position that you absolutely cannot catch up in. Same with skeletons. Don't lie, but do they necessarily need to be on your resume? If you have any skeletons in your closet, so that means if you were fired or quit and have a really negative relationship with a prior workplace, you have the ability to kind of leave that off. And if you do choose to add it onto your resume, make sure that you practice some sort of amiable, elevator pitch that doesn't necessarily just kind of grossly say that you ended this relationship terribly and that you should not use them as a reference, kind of thing. So making sure that you have that conversation with whoever is, if you skip 2 down, reviewing your resume. If you have something that you're not quite sure if it should be added on or not, if you should use that person as a reference or not, have that conversation with someone else, talk it through before you submit it and commit to that person being on your resume. Have 2 people review it. Have them check for spelling and grammar. It's really easy after 3 hours of staring at a document to just not see any of the mistakes anymore, even like the tiny minor formatting ones. So make sure that you are having someone review it, looking at it yourself, and then having another person review it before you submit it. And once you have the format down, once you have a good template written, then you don't necessarily need 2 people to read it every time, but you should always have a second set of eyes. And then last but not least, for references, always connect with them. Your references might be changing, or you might be applying for jobs for 3 months. Check in with them once in a while. Let them know what jobs you're applying to. Send them the job description so they're ready to talk about how you could specifically fit into that position, and thank them. Once they get a call, make sure to let them know that you're thankful for how they have referred you to this employer and potentially gotten you a job because of it. Any questions about the tips and tricks or parts of a resume? Great. So upkeep and personalization. We mentioned briefly that your resume should always be specific to the job that you have or are applying to, which means that it needs to be editable. If you submit a resume, we highly recommend that you submit a PDF version of it so that those little squiggly lines don't pop up under YouthWorks. For example, every time you type YouthWorks into Google Docs, it has that squiggly line come up. So if you were to save it in a PDF, those squiggly lines don't come up, even though it's technically a name of something. So submitting in PDF form, but keeping an editable version so that you can keep it current. So skipping to that last point. Keeping it current means that you don't have to sit here for 15 minutes to think about all the things that you've done in the last 5 years that you could possibly put on your resume. So keeping that running list, even if it's not in a resume format, keep a list in Google Docs of volunteer opportunities, classes that you really enjoyed, times that you helped people, jobs, internships, etc. Because as you get older, those things are going to become more and more prevalent and harder to keep track of. So having that list is an easy way to stay current on all of the things that you're doing, and again, plug them directly into that template, making it much easier. Lastly, accessibility. Your computer that you're working on now, your phone, things die, they crash, they delete. Making sure that you have an accessible version of your resume, be it on Google Docs, on the cloud, somewhere that you can access it from Baltimore, from anywhere in Maryland, from anywhere in the country, just in case. You never know. You're going to be moving around as adults, and you want to be able to access that resume when you need it. All right, where do we start? I know that was a lot of information. The next session is a work session. So we've talked about job searches, we've talked about applications, we've talked about resumes and professionalism. And now you have all this information and need to really use it. So where do you start? You're going to find a template, and there are a variety of templates in the world. There are hundreds. So you can find the one that fits best for you, or you can make your own. If you Google high school resume template, a million of them will come up. There are ones that specifically download into Google Docs, into Word, into a variety of different places that you can kind of move and format to best fit the information that you are providing. That could be skills, that could be awards, certificates, experience, etc. But all of them are shaped mostly the same with those basic information points that we talked about at the beginning. Find something that works for you that includes that content. I don't recommend a whole lot of colors, but if you have a little bit of pop of color, and editability. So if something's not working, find a different template. I believe Julia now is going to show us a couple examples. And if you all have any questions, feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat.
All right. So if I can just think you have to stop sharing your screen. And so we actually have two things to share. I'm gonna make sure that you see both. Okay. So, all right. So this first resume, this is actually like an example we had just like pulled online. It just kind of goes over some of the basics that you might want to fill out. So you see right here at the top, you would delete this "do you know where to begin" part, but where it says high school student resume, you would put your name, the section for your email address, you know, your city and your state. If you have a LinkedIn, that's maybe something that you might get like as you get a little bit older, or you know, after you graduate from high school. So you'll put that information in, or a website, and then your phone number. Sometimes, like, you know, you want to explain a little bit about why you, like, who you are, like a little brief kind of portion, like the objective. So you can put, you know, like this says motivated student who demonstrates strong work ethic and creative ability, seeking to apply my graphic design skills, blah, 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 blah. So you will kind of explain why you're applying and what information you want them to kind of get out of your resume. This one here starts with their education, what high school they went to, their GPA, and then kind of some of the relevant courses that they took while in school. So for example, I know that some schools, they might focus on business or CTE. So this would be a really good point or place to put information like that, so your relevant coursework. So if you know you want to apply for a job where you are doing art, so then you might want to say my relevant coursework is my art information. So all your art classes. If you're looking at writing, your English courses, or maybe any kind of English clubs you're a part of that you want to share. So your honors and clubs are also going to go there just to kind of share a little bit more information. And then this has major achievements. This person, was on yearbook club, so they kind of really talked about what they did, what they actually contributed to that club. And of course, you have like the dates on the right-hand side, kind of going like when they were involved in it. And then their Santa Monica newspaper, there was a graphic designer, once again, having a focus on the artwork that they were doing, the graphic design portion of what they're doing. And then they have additional skills. So the additional skills are proficient in Photoshop, HTML kind of knowledge, great photographer. So just like information that's going to sell them. Now, I know that we said we're going to have one page, especially if you're a high schooler. A lot of the time it usually is limited to one page, but this one has like a couple pages, so just two. And this last portion is awards, honors, and honorary mentions. So if you've gotten an award for best attendance, or you've gotten, top writing at your school, some kind of contest, this will be a place where you put that. One of the things to remember is that when you are also doing your resume, your font and the size of the information can also help you make sure you can limit it to one page. So I'm sure if we were to kind of like maybe unbold some of the things in here, it would probably go to one page, but it's just to kind of like give you some of that information. And then another example is actually a student that we are currently working with. And this is like what she has for her resume. She stuck with her education. She goes to Baltimore City College. She puts her GPA. She put in her principal's honors, her athletics and activities, any kind of, team she was a part of. She put that information for educational and community service. And so this really is, like I said, very quick, succinct about who she is and what she does, the things that she cares about, and how long she's been doing them and what she did. So you see, for example, Green Team, she did that for 9th and 8th grade. Community garden, packaged herbs and grown and gave to the community. Thanksgiving soup kitchen, she fed the homeless. Packaged care packages. So those are all things that you can put. So it doesn't have to be elaborate, but you wanted to have a good idea of the work that you do and that you have done and how that could really help out a company or an organization. I'm going to stop sharing now. Are there any questions?
Something else to keep in mind is that if you're in the process of creating your resume and you're really struggling to come up with things that you've done over the last couple of years, maybe that is time to kind of refocus some of your energy on joining a club for the last year of high school. Making sure that there are plenty of opportunities to volunteer in your community as well. So maybe you're at graduation in May or June, and you're like, okay, I still got nothing because I can't join a club possibly in the last quarter of school where all of our, like, everything's going on. Then thinking about summer opportunities and how even volunteering, you don't have to get paid for it. It doesn't have to be a huge commitment, but an hour every week, a couple hours every month really looks good on your resume, especially if you can continue doing it for a couple years. Any more questions? We're going to drop a couple links to a variety of different resumes into the chat shortly, so you can look at those. We highly recommend finding something that matches what you want to do, or something editable enough. Some of the formatting in Word is really hard to format, so you're like, this is really hard to work with and it's not worth the headache. So play around with them, plug in your information, and find one that works best for you. Questions? Find those. Drop those in the chat. All right, here they are. Feel free to open. I believe the first one needs to be just saved as a copy, and then you'll have
Mm-hmm.
a Google Doc in your drive. The rest of them have a couple different links that can send you into a variety of different places. And we'll send this out to Miss Victoria, and she can send it out in an email as well.